Maid was thrown out with pregnancy after being forced to marry a ruthless virgin CEO, the twins. Her throat tightened. She thought of her mother in the hospital bed, of the mounting bills, of the eviction notice on their apartment door. Have you ever had to sacrifice your freedom to protect someone you love? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She stood in the Armani wedding dress she hadn't chosen, trembling fingers gripping a contract instead of flowers, about to marry a stranger who looked at her like an inconvenience to be managed. Kayla Brooks swallowed hard, watching as Manhattan's elite filled the penthouse ballroom. Just 3 weeks ago, she'd been cleaning this very room, a nameless maid with a vacuum cleaner. Now she was marrying the owner, Landon Pierce, Boston's most eligible bachelor and CEO of Pierce Enterprises. "Stop fidgeting," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear as cameras flashed. His hand rested possessively on her lower back, sending unwelcome electricity through her body. Remember our agreement. How could she forget? The contract in her purse spelled it out clearly. 1 year of marriage to save his reputation, complete with non-disclosure agreements and a modest payout that would cover her mother's medical bills. No love, no future, just business. "You look beautiful," Landon's mother said, loudly for the benefit of nearby guests, her eyes cold as winter. Though we could have used another fitting. The woman's gaze swept over Kayla's curves with disapproval. Kayla bit her tongue. She'd grown up in Detroit's roughest neighborhood, raised by a single mother who'd worked 3 jobs to keep them housed. She learned early that survival sometimes meant swallowing your pride. But this, marrying into Boston's old money while being treated like an embarrassing necessity, tested her limits. "Let's begin," the officiant announced, bringing the murmuring crowd to attention. As Landon turned to face her, Kayla caught a flash of something in his eyes. Not affection or desire, but relief. The scandal that threatened his family name was being contained. The whispers about the blonde woman who'd claimed to be carrying his child would be silenced. His company's stock wouldn't plummet. Problem solved. His hands were cool as they held hers, his voice steady as he recited vows he didn't mean. "I, Landon James Pierce, take you, Kayla Marie Brooks." She remembered the day he'd summoned her to his office after hours. How he'd laid out the situation clinically. His need for immediate marriage to someone suitable enough to present to society but unthreatening to his world. How he'd promised to pay for her mother's cancer treatments if she agreed. "Do you, Kayla, take Landon to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Her throat tightened. She thought of her mother in the hospital bed, of the mounting bills, of the eviction notice on their apartment door. "I do," she said, the words falling like stones. His lips brushed hers in the ceremonial kiss, brief, impersonal, yet leaving a burn she couldn't explain. Applause erupted around them. Camera flashes blinded her. It was done. Later, as guests swirled around them with champagne and calculated congratulations, Kayla felt the weight of what she'd done. She'd given up her freedom to a man who collected people like possessions. The contract in her purse ensured she couldn't escape. When he slipped the diamond ring onto her finger, too large, rushed from the jeweler without sizing, she caught his whisper, "My jet leaves for Chicago in an hour. Pack only what you need." Her new life was beginning, and it felt like a door closing. Have you ever had to sacrifice your freedom to protect someone you love? What lines would you refuse to cross, even for family? Share your thoughts below, because what Kayla didn't know as she followed her new husband to the waiting limousine was that some sacrifices demand more than you intend to give, and some contracts can't prepare you for what happens when business becomes personal. The man who'd vowed to cherish her before God and high society now wouldn't even look at her across the breakfast table in their Chicago mansion. 1 month into their arrangement, and Kayla had learned the rules. No entering his office without permission. No questions about his work. No phone calls to friends in New York. No public appearances without his approval. "Your breakfast is getting cold," she said, breaking the silence. Landon didn't look up from his tablet. "I'm not hungry." Their bedroom stretched larger than her childhood apartment, with walls painted the same icy blue as his eyes, everything immaculate and untouched. much like their marriage. They slept on opposite sides of the California King, a glacier of Egyptian cotton between them. Chicago's winter pressed against the windows, mirroring the chill inside. Kayla wrapped her robe tighter, watching him. Harvard-educated, 32, with a face that belonged in magazines and a body maintained by private trainers. On paper, the perfect catch. In reality, a stranger who'd bought her presence with a contract. The sound of the shower running drew her attention upstairs later that morning. Without thinking, she entered the master bathroom to leave fresh towels, only to freeze as Landon stepped out, water streaming down his muscled chest, a towel loosely wrapped around his waist. For a moment, neither moved. Her eyes betrayed her, noticing the droplets trailing down his abdomen, the power in his shoulders. His gaze darkened, something flashing across his face before the familiar mask returned. "I didn't give you permission to enter my bathroom," he said, voice tight. "It's my bathroom too." The words slipped out before she could stop them. He stepped closer, water dripping onto the marble. "Let me be clear, nothing in this house is yours. You are here because I allow it, because we have an agreement. Don't mistake this for a real marriage." She lifted her chin. "Then what would you call it?" "I didn't marry you to have a wife," he said, straightening his towel without looking at her. "I married you to have a solution." The words stung more than they should have. Later, as she walked through the endless rooms of the mansion, Kayla noticed something on Landon's desk, a newspaper with the headline, "Pierce Family Rivals Question Sudden Marriage." Beneath it, a blonde woman's tearful face with the caption, "Chelsea Winters claims she was Landon Pierce's intended bride." The coffee cup froze midway to her lips. So this was the woman, the scandal he'd paid to bury. Her phone pinged with a message from Landon. "Charity gala tonight. With a blue dress from the closet. Car at 7. Be ready. When was the last time you felt invisible to someone who should see you? Drop a heart if you've ever had to find your own worth when others couldn't." Because tonight, for the first time, Kayla would step into Chicago society as Mrs. Pierce, a role she'd been given without a script, playing opposite a man who treated her presence like a business transaction with diminishing returns. The first time he touched her, really touched her, wasn't from desire but from panic when the cameras caught them leaving the charity gala. Camera flashes exploded around them like artillery fire, each burst illuminating the tension in his jaw as he pulled her closer, whispering smile through gritted teeth. "Mr. Pierce, is it true you married your maid to cover up your affair with Chelsea Winters?" Landon's arm tightened around Kayla's waist. "My wife and I have no comment." Wife. The word sounded foreign on his lips. Back in the limousine, his mask slipped. "They're getting closer to the truth," he muttered, loosening his tie with shaking fingers. "The board meeting is in 2 weeks. If this story breaks before then." "What truth?" Kayla asked, emboldened by the champagne she consumed to get through the evening of fake smiles and whispers. His eyes met hers, truly met them for the first time in weeks. "The truth that could destroy everything I've built." That night, he came to her bedroom door, not with tenderness, but with determination. "We need to convince them," he said, standing in the doorway in silk pajama bottoms. "The press is watching. The business partners are suspicious. We need to be more convincing." She understood immediately. "You want us to sleep together?" "I want us to appear to be sleeping together," he corrected. "Rumors of a cold marriage will fuel speculation about Chelsea's claims." "And what exactly are her claims?" His jaw tightened. "That's not your concern. It is if I'm supposed to help disprove them." A muscle worked in his cheek. "She claims we were engaged, that I got her pregnant and then paid her off to disappear." "Did you?" "No." His voice was steel. "I never touched her." Something in his tone made her believe him. When he approached the bed, Kayla's heart raced. His hands moved with precision, but no tenderness, like following steps in a business acquisition rather than making love to his wife. Yet her body betrayed her, responding to his touch with an intensity that shocked them both. Afterward, as he slept beside her, his phone lit up with a message. "The audit starts tomorrow. They know." For the first time, she saw raw fear cross his sleeping face, and something inside her, something she fought against, wanted to protect him. Morning brought awkwardness. He dressed quickly, avoiding her eyes. "I'll be late tonight. Don't wait up." But that evening, headlines broke across financial news. Pierce Enterprises under scrutiny. Board demands emergency meeting. When he returned after midnight, the scent of whiskey surrounding him, Kayla was still awake. "It's falling apart," he said, collapsing into a chair, his perfect facade cracking. "Everything I built. What would you do if your body responded to someone your heart resisted? How do you reconcile physical attraction with emotional rejection? Tell me your experience." Because as Kayla watched the powerful CEO unravel before her eyes, she faced a choice: remain the solution he'd purchased or become the partner he never expected to need. She found a pregnancy test hidden in his bathroom trash, not hers, and with it, pieces of a puzzle she never asked to solve. The test was negative, dated weeks before their wedding. Beside it lay a torn photo of Landon with the blonde woman from a newspaper, Chelsea Winters, both in formal attire at what appeared to be a business function. Rain lashed against floor-to-ceiling windows as lightning illuminated the living room where they faced each other. Two strangers connected by paper and promises, but separated by walls neither knew how to scale. "You had no right to go through my things," Landon said, voice dangerously low. "I wasn't snooping. I was cleaning, which was my job before you decided I'd make a better wife than Maid." Kayla held up the test. "Chelsea thought she was pregnant. That's why she's claiming you abandoned her." "It wasn't mine." His knuckles whitened around his glass. I never. Never what?" The question hung between them. His laugh was hollow. "The great irony of my reputation. Boston's most notorious playboy. Do you know what they called me in business school? The Virgin CEO. Like it was a joke, a weakness." Understanding dawned slowly. "You've never been with anyone. I told you I believe in control. In all things." His eyes met hers, challenging. "Sex creates complications. Attachments. Liabilities. Then why sleep with me last night? Because you're my wife. On paper, at least." "And Chelsea." Lightning flashed, illuminating the strain in his face. "A calculated mistake. Her father owns Winters Media Group. I needed the merger. She made it clear what she expected in return. So you let her on? I played along. Then she claimed we'd been intimate when we hadn't. Said she was pregnant. When the test came back negative, I ended the relationship. 2 weeks later, you and I were in the tabloids. Her revenge." Kayla approached him slowly. "So I was never about hiding a pregnancy. I was about proving you'd moved on. You were the perfect solution. No connections to my world. No expectations beyond our contract." His gaze was unflinching. "But yes, marrying you was meant to silence her claims. And the night we spent together? A mistake." The word stung more than it should have. "Then why are you looking at me like that now?" His fingers encircled her wrists, not painfully but firmly. Their faces were inches apart, breath mingling. "Because you're the most frustrating, confusing part of my life right now." "Let go of me," she whispered, not moving away. His fingers released her wrists, sliding up to cup her face with unexpected gentleness. "You're the first person who's looked at me like that in years," he whispered, voice breaking. "Like I might be worth saving. Have you ever discovered someone's secret that changed everything you thought you knew about them? The moment that made you question your own judgment? Share below, because tomorrow night would bring the business dinner that would test their facade, and neither was prepared for what happens when pretense begins to feel more real than the truth it's hiding. One dinner changed everything. Not because of what was said, but because for the first time, they both put down their weapons and simply saw each other. The private dining room hummed with money and ambition, voices rising and falling like stock prices while crystal clinked and deals formed in coded language she wasn't supposed to understand. 12 of Chicago's business elite gathered to discuss the future of Pierce Enterprises amid growing rumors. Kayla wore the black dress Landon had chosen. Elegant, expensive, with just enough sparkle to draw attention without demanding it. The perfect CEO's wife costume. "How exactly did you two meet?" asked Victor Harlow, Pierce Enterprises' largest investor, eyeing Kayla with poorly disguised skepticism. Before Landon could answer with their practice story, Kayla smiled. "I was working in his New York apartment. He asked me to reach something on a high shelf, I fell right into his arms. A technical truth wrapped in romantic fiction. Love at first sight? Victor's wife asked, clearly doubtful. Not at all, Kayla replied honestly. I thought he was arrogant and demanding. The table tensed, but then I saw how he treated his staff when he thought no one was watching. Respectful. Fair. She touched Landon's hand naturally. The public doesn't see that side of him. Landon's surprise was visible only to her. The conversation shifted to business, the audit, the accusations, Chelsea Winter's family trying to block an upcoming merger. This woman claims intimate knowledge of your personal life, Landon, said another board member pointedly. Makes one wonder how she acquired such familiarity. My husband's personal life is exactly that. Personal, Kayla interjected, her voice level but firm. And I can assure you, as the person who shares his bed, Ms. Winter's claims are fantasies born of rejection. Landon's hand found the small of her back, possessive yet protective, sending heat through her body. Not for show this time, but in genuine appreciation. As the dinner concluded, the tension had visibly shifted. The board members looked at her differently. Not as the emergency bride, but as a partner worthy of respect. In the car ride home, silence stretched between them. You didn't have to defend me, he finally said. Isn't that what this arrangement is for? You spoke like you believed what you were saying. She turned to face him. Maybe I'm starting to see parts of you worth defending. Back at the mansion, he reached for her differently. Not for show, not for cameras, but with hunger that matched her own. This isn't part of our agreement, she whispered against his mouth. His answer changed everything. I know. When have you surprised someone who underestimated you? That moment when their perception visibly shifted? Tag someone who never underestimates your worth. Because tomorrow would bring a new understanding between them. One not written in any contract. One that would make their arranged marriage more dangerous and more real than either had bargained for. And when passion finally broke through calculation, there would be no going back to the safety of pretense. She prepared for a loveless marriage. What she hadn't prepared for was falling in a bed with a man whose touch set fire to every principle she thought she had. Morning light crept across tangled sheets, illuminating the map of their night together. Discarded clothing marking the path from door to bed. Two people who began as strangers now curled together like answers to questions neither had asked. Kayla watched Landon sleeping. His features softened without the weight of Pierce Enterprises on his shoulders. Last night had been different. No calculación, no performance for invisible cameras. Just hunger, discovery, and something dangerously close to connection. His eyes opened, finding hers immediately. You're still here. It's my bed too, she reminded him, echoing their earlier argument. His fingers traced the curve of her shoulder, hesitant in the daylight. Last night was unexpected, educational. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She propped herself on one elbow. For a man with your reputation, you seemed inexperienced. He didn't flinch from the truth. The rumors about my private life were useful for business. Manufactured mystique. So I'm really my first, he confirmed, watching her closely. The purity rumors were convenient. Men like me are expected to be controlled in all things. She processed this revelation. This gift she hadn't asked for and didn't know how to value. Why tell me this? Because you stopped being just a contract to me somewhere between that dinner and this bed. His confession hung between them, too honest for their arrangement. Kayla felt walls crumbling that she'd built long before meeting him. She kissed him then, not with passion, but with acceptance. His response was immediate, rolling her beneath him with newfound confidence. Show me again, he whispered against her neck. Show me what I've been missing. Their second time was slower, more deliberate. Her guiding, him learning the geography of pleasure with the same focused attention he gave to acquisition deals. Afterward, she felt the dangerous shift in her heart, from employee to something unnamed but precious. What happens now? She asked as they lay catching their breath. Now, The office phone shattered the moment, ringing with jarring persistence at 4 a.m. Landon reached for it, his expression transforming from lover to businessman in seconds. Pierce speaking. The voice on the other end spoke rapidly. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. He hung up, already pulling away. "The board wants an emergency meeting. Something's wrong." She sat up, sheet clutched her chest. "Landon, don't tell anyone about tonight," he said, buttoning his shirt with efficient movements. "It complicates things." Just like that, the mask returned. The CEO replaced the man who'd held her with wonder hours before. "What secrets have you kept to maintain an image others expected? How exhausting is the gap between perception and reality?" Share your thoughts below. Because as Kayla watched him transform back into Landon Pierce, Boston's most eligible bachelor and corporate shark, she realized the most dangerous part of their arrangement wasn't the contract. It was the way her heart refused to honor its terms. She discovered she was pregnant on the same morning his company announced record profits. Both creations growing inside different worlds that were never meant to merge. The bathroom tile felt cool against her knees as she stared at the test. Two lives balanced at a crossroads. The path ahead suddenly veering from the calculated exit strategy she'd been planning. 3 months into their marriage, and Kayla had started thinking about after. The contract specified 1 year. She'd assumed they'd both be counting days until freedom. But now cells were dividing inside her, creating a permanent link to Landon Pierce that no lawyer could dissolve. She hid the test as the television in the bedroom blared with breaking business news. Pierce Enterprises reports fourth quarter profits exceeding projections by 34%. CEO Landon Pierce attributes success to aggressive restructuring and strategic partnerships. The camera cut to Landon at a press conference, commanding the room in a charcoal suit, speaking with the confidence of a man who controlled his universe. "Mr. Pierce, has the investigation into financial irregularities been resolved?" "The audit found no evidence of wrongdoing," Landon replied smoothly. Pierce Enterprises maintains the highest standards of financial integrity. "And the rumors about your sudden marriage?" His smile never wavered. "My personal life is exactly that, personal. But I'll say this, marrying Kayla was the best decision I've made this year, personally and professionally." The easy lie, or was it a lie anymore, made her stomach clench. Or maybe that was morning sickness. When he returned home that evening, triumph radiated from him like heat. "We did it," he announced, loosening his tie. "Stock's up 18%. Board's backing down. The Winters family can't touch us now." He swept her into his arms, spinning her in a circle that made her dizzy in more ways than one. "Celebrate with me," he murmured against her neck, hands already working at the buttons of her blouse. She should tell him. Now, before they crossed this threshold again, before his hands moved lower, before her body betrayed her mind's hesitation. But his kiss silenced the words, and soon they were tangled on the living room couch, his victory and her secret adding layers to their passion that neither acknowledged. His hands caressed her still flat stomach, unaware of what grew beneath his touch. "You were magnificent at that dinner," he said between kisses. "The board members can't stop talking about how perfect you are." Perfect. The word echoed hollowly as his phone chimed with a message that made him pull away. DNA results confirmed. Moving forward with lawsuit. She watched his face drain of color. "What is it?" "Nothing." He stood abruptly, straightening his clothes. "Just business." But she'd seen the fear in his eyes, the same fear she felt about her own unshared news. Have you ever held life-changing news, unsure if it would be received as blessing or burden? That moment when words could either build or destroy. Tell me if you've stood at that crossroads. Because tomorrow's doctor appointment would force a revelation that neither of them was prepared for, and test the fragile trust they'd begun to build on a foundation of necessity rather than choice. The doctor's monitor showed 2 heartbeats, twins, while her husband's face showed nothing but suspicion and rage. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Pierce," the obstetrician said, pointing to the screen. "See these 2 separate sacs? You're having fraternal twins." Landon stared at the monitor, his expression shifting from shock to something darker as the doctor continued, explaining the development of 2 separate embryos. The doctor's office transformed from miracle to battlefield in seconds. Hushed voices and closed doors, unable to contain the storm brewing between them as he backed away from both the screen and her. "I'll give you two a moment," the doctor said, clearly sensing the tension as she slipped out. Kayla wiped the gel from her stomach with trembling hands. "Landon, how far along?" His voice was ice. "About 11 weeks. He did the calculation instantly. Right after we married." "Yes." She reached for his hand. "After that first night." He jerked away. "Twins don't run in my family," he said, voice dropping dangerously. "Who else have you been with?" The question landed like a slap across her face. "What?" "Don't play innocent." "Twins? After one time together? Well, my family has no history of multiple births. I haven't been with anyone else. Ever." She sat up, dignity gathering around her like armor. "These are your children. Convenient timing, isn't it?" His laugh was harsh. "Just when my legal troubles are clearing up. Just when the prenup's about to vest additional benefits. Suddenly you're carrying twins that will entitle you to massive child support. You think I planned this?" Anger heated her words. "You think I wanted to get pregnant by a man who sees me as a business transaction? I think you saw an opportunity and took it. The question is, who helped you?" "No one helped me." "These are your babies, Landon. Prove it." "Fine, we'll do a paternity test." "And risk the pregnancy? How convenient that we can't verify until they're born." He paced the small room. "Did Chelsea put you up to this? Is that it? Are you working with her?" "I don't even know her." Kayla's voice broke. "Why can't you believe me?" "Because this doesn't make sense." He slammed his hand against the wall. "One time together, and suddenly you're having twins? It's statistically improbable. It's not impossible. The doctor just explained. The doctor can be bought. Anyone can be bought." His eyes narrowed. "That's something I learned long before you came along." She placed a protective hand over her stomach. "These are your children. Maybe." He straightened his tie, composure returning like a mask sliding into place. "Or maybe this is an elaborate con. Either way, I'm not taking chances." He pulled out his phone, fingers flying over the screen. "I've just transferred $50,000 to your account. That should be sufficient until the birth. After that, we'll determine paternity and proceed accordingly." The clinical tone broke something in her. "You think you could just pay me off? Like I'm some problem to manage? Isn't that what our entire relationship has been? A problem managed through financial arrangement?" The truth of it burned. "Get your things from the house tonight," he continued, not meeting her eyes. "My lawyer will contact you about separation terms." "You're throwing me out? I'm 4 months pregnant with your children." "Allegedly my children." He moved toward the door. "I've built everything I have through careful calculation and control. I won't let anyone, not Chelsea, not you, not these supposed children, destroy that." She never saw the blow coming. Not his hands, he never touched her, but his words, "Get out, tonight. Take whatever belongs to you and leave." That evening, as security escorted her from their Chicago home into the snow, one hand protectively covering her stomach, she realized with crystal clarity, he had never seen her as human, only as property that could be discarded. When have you been falsely accused of something that cut to your core? How did you defend your honor when someone refused to believe in your integrity? Share your story, because as the gates of the Pierce estate closed behind her, Kayla Brooks made a promise to herself and the 2 tiny lives inside her. She would rebuild without him, and someday he would regret throwing away the only real thing in his carefully constructed world. 4 months pregnant with twins and sleeping on a shelter cot, she discovered something Landon's wealth had never given her: community. "Honey, you can't keep wearing those same 2 outfits," said Loretta, the 60-something shelter coordinator in Atlanta. "Especially not with those babies growing. Come see what donations came in yesterday." 2 months had passed in Chicago. 2 months of starting over with nothing but a suitcase and the money Landon had transferred, which Kayla refused to touch out of pride and anger. The women's shelter in Atlanta hummed with quiet determination, walls painted sunny yellow belying the storms that had driven each resident through its doors, yet somehow cultivating strength in shared survival. Atlanta hadn't been her first choice, but with a college roommate offering temporary housing and job leads, it became her lifeline. The shelter came after when a roommate's boyfriend moved in and space grew tight. "Why don't you just use his money?" asked Tanya, a fellow resident escaping an abusive ex. "Milk him for every penny." "Because then he wins," Kayla replied, folding donated baby clothes. "He gets to say I was after his money all along." "Girl, you're carrying his babies. Take the cash." But Kayla had started something new, filing for legal aid, beginning the process for child support and recognition. Not using his money gave her leverage, moral high ground. Each day brought small victories. A part-time receptionist job at a community health clinic. Prenatal care through a program for low-income mothers. A lead on affordable housing for single parents. "You've got skills," Dr. Washington told her after watching her calm a frightened child in the waiting room. "Have you thought about healthcare work?" "I was halfway through nursing school when my mom got sick," Kayla admitted. "Had to drop out to work. We have scholarships for after the babies come." Hope, something she hadn't felt since before that fateful doctor's appointment in Chicago. At night, lying on her narrow cot, she placed both hands on her growing belly, talking to the twins about their future. Never about their father. That wound remained too fresh. But her body remembered. Dreams of Landon would wake her, skin flushed and heart racing, anger mixing with an ache she couldn't extinguish. Her growing belly, a constant reminder of the night they'd created life together. "You've got mail," Loretta announced one morning, 6 months into pregnancy. Certified letter. The Pierce Enterprises logo made her stomach lurch. Inside, legal papers requesting DNA testing immediately after birth. No note, no inquiry about her welfare or the babies. Just legal demands. That night, she called the number for his attorney. "Tell Mr. Pierce I'll comply with testing, but I expect full medical coverage for the delivery and proper support afterward. Mr. Pierce is prepared to be generous if paternity is confirmed," the lawyer replied smoothly. "I don't want generosity. I want responsibility." The following week, her phone lit up with breaking news. Pierce Enterprises under federal investigation for fraud. The empire Landon built crumbling before the nation's eyes. Minutes later, not Landon, but his lawyer called. "Mrs. Pierce, your husband needs you to return to Chicago immediately. He's prepared to make amends." She laughed without humor. "Now he needs me? Mrs. Pierce, this is serious." Mr. Pierce's testimony alone won't satisfy federal investigators. They need corroboration about certain meetings, dates that only you can provide. "And if I refuse, then Pierce Enterprises falls, along with the financial security of your children's future." What unexpected blessing have you found after a devastating loss? The moment when rock bottom became foundation instead of failure? Drop a red heart if you've experienced that rebirth. Because tomorrow's court appearance would force a confrontation months in the making, with a man who'd thrown her away once, but now needed her more than he could admit. She walked into the Georgia courtroom 7 months pregnant with his children, while he sat at the defendant's table, a man who'd lost everything but his pride, until he saw her belly. The courthouse columns stood like sentinels against the Atlanta heat. Reporters clustered on marble steps with microphones extended like weapons, hunting for the next headline in a scandal that had consumed the business world. "Mrs. Pierce, did you know about the financial irregularities? Were you part of the cover-up? Is it true you're seeking divorce?" Kayla ignored them all, head high as her attorney guided her through the crowd. The Navy maternity dress couldn't hide her advanced pregnancy. Twins making her appear nearly full-term, though she had weeks remaining. Inside, air conditioning raised goosebumps on her arms. Or maybe it was seeing Landon for the first time in nearly 4 months. He looked thinner, shadows beneath his eyes, the perfect image of Boston privilege now frayed at the edges. His tailored suit hung slightly loose, his normally immaculate hair showing streaks of gray that hadn't been there before. The moment he saw her, his eyes locked on her stomach. The visible evidence of what he'd rejected, what he'd accused her of faking. Something shifted in his expression, shock, recognition, and something that might have been regret if she believed him capable of it. "All rise," the bailiff called as the judge entered. The hearing began with dry legal language. Charges of financial manipulation and document falsification outlined in careful terms. Kayla half listened, aware of Landon's gaze repeatedly returning to her. Mrs. Pierce, the prosecuting attorney, addressed her. You were present at the Jensen meeting on February 12th, correct? Yes, I was. And did you witness your husband signing the amended contracts? Objection. Landon's attorney interrupted. Mrs. Pierce has no financial expertise to evaluate document content. Your Honor, Kayla spoke directly to the judge. I may not have financial expertise, but I know what I saw. My husband received a call during that dinner that upset him. He stepped out for 15 minutes. When he returned, the documents had different colored tabs than before. A murmur went through the courtroom. Landon stared at her, surprise evident. And after that meeting, she continued, he told me there had been complications, but that everything was handled. For the next hour, she recounted details from various business functions. Conversations overheard, meetings interrupted, late-night calls that left Landon agitated. Her memory for details impressed even the prosecution. When the court recessed, Landon's attorney approached. Mrs. Pierce, we'd like to discuss a potential agreement. I have nothing to discuss with Mr. Pierce. He's prepared to acknowledge paternity without testing. Full medical coverage, generous support. In exchange for favorable testimony. The attorney smiled thinly. In exchange for accurate testimony. My testimony was accurate. Perhaps there are details you might recall differently. Are you asking me to lie under oath? I'm asking you to consider your children's future. Kayla placed a protective hand on her belly. That's exactly what I'm doing. When court resumed, she felt Landon's eyes following her every movement. The weight of his attention both familiar and unwelcome. As she returned to the stand, a court officer approached the judge, handing over a document. The judge reviewed it, then called both attorneys forward. After a hushed conference, the judge addressed the courtroom. New evidence has been presented. We'll adjourn until tomorrow morning. As people filed out, Landon broke away from his legal team, approaching her directly. Kayla. Her name sounded different on his lips now. Uncertain, almost reverent. Don't. She stepped back. The babies are doing fine without you. His eyes held hers. I made a terrible mistake. Which one? Marrying me? Throwing me out? Or getting caught in your financial schemes? Before he could answer, a court officer approached with a document. Mr. Pierce, DNA test results as requested. The results passed to Landon by his attorney drained the remaining color from his face. Twins. His twins. The realization of what he'd done, abandoning not just her, but his children, hit with such force that the notorious CEO, who'd never shown emotion in public, dropped to his knees before her, right there in the courtroom. What would you say to someone who threw you away when you needed them most, only to need you when they hit bottom? Would you help or walk away? Comment what you'd choose, because tomorrow would bring a choice that neither of them had anticipated. Forgiveness not freely given, but earned through actions that would test the boundaries of pride, need, and the unexpected bonds of family. The fraud charges that threatened to destroy him had nothing to do with money. They centered on a child he'd allegedly fathered years ago, a child that DNA now proved wasn't his. Hotel room negotiations stretched past midnight. Attorneys and executives huddled around documents while she sat apart, one hand on her stomach, watching the man who discarded her now depend on her word to save everything he'd built. The documents were forged, Landon explained, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. Chelsea and her father doctored records claiming I'd acknowledged paternity of a child she miscarried 2 years ago. They've been building this case since before our wedding. Why not just do a DNA test then? Kayla asked. There was no child to test, just paperwork, dates, and her word against mine. He looked exhausted. The Jensen contract was my attempt to block their takeover. That's the fraud they're alleging. His attorney nodded. Mrs. Pierce, your testimony about the timing of those meetings is critical. The prosecution's timeline falls apart with your account. So I'm supposed to save you? She directed the question at Landon. I don't deserve your help, he admitted, voice stripped of arrogance. But these children, our children, deserve a father who can provide for them, who can protect them. They rode the elevator down to the parking garage in silence, the tension between them physical, desire mixed with distrust. "I meant what I said upstairs," he said as they reached her car. "I made a terrible mistake not believing you. I let fear control me. Fear of being manipulated, used." "Like you used me?" "Yes. No excuses. No justification. Just truth." She studied him. This man who'd once seemed untouchable, now humbled by consequences. "I'll testify to what I saw. Nothing more, nothing less." Relief washed over his features. "Thank you. I'm not doing it for you." As she moved to open her car door, a sharp pain doubled her over. Warm liquid trickled down her legs. "Kayla!" Alarm filled his voice. "My water broke," she gasped. "It's too early." Panic flooded the negotiation room as Landon carried her to his car, breaking every speed limit to reach the hospital. "Don't you dare leave me," she whispered through pain. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. How do you balance justice with mercy when someone who hurt you deeply now needs your help? Is revenge ever worth the cost to your own soul? Share your wisdom below. Their children entered the world fighting for every breath, just like their mother had been doing since the night he threw her away. The NICU wrapped them in hushed urgency, monitors beeping life's fragile rhythm while tiny bodies fought inside glass homes, transparent walls more honest than the ones Landon had built around his heart. Mason arrived first, 4 pounds, 3 ounces of determination, dark hair like his mother's. Mia followed 7 minutes later, smaller at barely 4 pounds, with her father's blue eyes. 7 weeks early, the doctor explained. Their lungs need time to develop. The next 72 hours are critical. For 3 days, Kayla and Landon existed in the limbo of the NICU waiting room, sleeping in shifts on uncomfortable chairs, speaking only about the baby's progress. On the 4th night, exhaustion cracked their defenses. "I had the nursery painted yellow," she confessed, voice rough from crying. "At the apartment, I finally found yellow with white furniture. Nothing fancy." Landon's hands trembled around his coffee cup. "I've missed everything. The first kicks, the hiccups, finding out their gender. You chose to miss it. I know." The simple acknowledgement hung between them. When the nurse called them in for the midnight check, they stood on opposite sides of the incubators, watching the rise and fall of tiny chests. "You can touch them," the nurse encouraged. "It helps them fight." Kayla reached in first, her finger engulfed by Mason's miniature hand. Landon hesitated, then placed his hand through the opening of Mia's incubator. The baby girl gripped his finger with surprising strength. His composure broke. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Kayla wasn't sure if he was speaking to her or their daughter. On the 7th day, when both babies could breathe without assistance, the doctor brought papers for their birth certificates. "Will you put my name?" Landon asked, uncertainty replacing his once unshakable confidence. Kayla nodded. They deserved to know their father. When she agreed to let him sign the birth certificates, Mason and Mia Pierce, she added one condition that made him pause. "I'll testify at your hearing. I'll help clear your name, but I won't move back to Chicago. If you want to know your children, you come to Atlanta. My world, my terms." What life event humbled you completely, stripping away everything you thought mattered? The moment that rearranged your priorities forever? Tell me about your turning point. He arrived at her modest Atlanta apartment with papers that shocked her. Not just the deed to a new home in her name, but signed documents giving her full custody regardless of his case outcome. Summer rain tapped against windows as they sat across her kitchen table. The billionaire CEO, now in jeans and a t-shirt, drinking coffee from a chipped mug, watching his twins sleep with wonder that made him appear human for the first time. "The house is in a good school district," Landon explained. 3 bedrooms, fenced yard, close to the hospital. "Why are you doing this?" Kayla asked, reviewing the custody agreement. "No strings, no demands, just support and visitation rights that favored her completely. Because control cost me everything that matters." He set down his mug. "I thought I could manage life like I manage business. I was wrong. The twins were 3 months old now, growing stronger every day. Landon had rented an apartment nearby, flying back to Chicago only for court appearances and critical meetings. Pierce Enterprises was stabilizing under new oversight while he focused on something more important. The judge dismissed most charges, he told her. Your testimony made the difference. I only told the truth. That's all I needed. His gaze held hers. That's all I need now. When Mason fussed in his bassinet, they both moved to check him. Their hands brushed as they reached for the baby, the contact sending familiar electricity between them. I've got him, Landon said, lifting his son with growing confidence. The man who once couldn't loosen his tie without precision now changed diapers and heated bottles with dedicated focus. Watching him cradle Mason against his chest, Kayla felt the barriers around her heart crack. Not falling, not yet, but weakening. The court case wraps up tomorrow, he said as he placed the sleeping baby back down. I'll need to be in Chicago for the final hearing. And then I was hoping. He hesitated, the powerful so momentarily replaced by someone vulnerable. The Atlanta office needs restructuring. I could base myself here, permanently. The night before the final hearing, as they reviewed her testimony one last time, the twins finally asleep after hours of fussing, he asked the question she'd been waiting for. If I'm cleared tomorrow, if we win, would you consider starting over? Not as a contract, not as business, as us. Can trust ever truly be rebuilt after betrayal? Or is it always a different structure on damaged foundation? Share your experience with giving second chances. She took the stand wearing not designer clothes he'd once bought her, but her own strength, testifying not to save his company, but to restore truth to a situation built on lies. The federal courtroom fell silent as she spoke, rows of executives in $1,000 suits leaning forward to hear the former Maid who now held the fate of billions in her truth, power shifting like tectonic plates beneath marble floors. Mrs. Pierce, the prosecutor began, did your husband instruct you to lie about the Jensen meetings? No. Her voice carried clearly. He never discussed business details with me. Yet you attended these functions. What? I was his wife, expected to be present. A wife he married suddenly, under suspicious circumstances? Kayla met the woman's gaze steadily. Our circumstances were our own. Mrs. Pierce, were you aware of the payments to Chelsea Winters? I learned them later. They were settlement for false claims, not admission of guilt. And you believe that? I've seen the DNA results myself. The child wasn't his. For 2 hours, they tried to rattle her, to find inconsistencies. They found none. Through it all, Landon's eyes never left hers. Intense connection across the courtroom, speaking volumes about the journey from arrangement to something real. When she stepped down, the judge called a brief recess. In the hallway, Chelsea Winters herself approached, blonde, beautiful, and seething. You think you've won? She hissed. You're nothing but a replacement. A convenience. Kayla squared her shoulders. I'm the mother of his children. I'm the woman who saw his worth beyond his wallet. What are you? Chelsea flinched as though struck. When court resumed, the judge reviewed final evidence. Based on documentation provided in witness testimony, this court finds insufficient evidence to support charges of fraud or financial misconduct. Case dismissed. Cameras flashed as they exited together, his hand hovering near hers but not touching, respecting boundaries she'd established. What happens now? A reporter shouted. Before Landon could answer, Kayla stepped forward. Now we find out if a man who built an empire can build something that actually matters. When did you stand up and speak your truth when everyone expected you to stay silent? That moment you found power in your own voice. Comment with your story of speaking up. 1 year after he discarded her in the Chicago snow, they stood in an Atlanta garden with their twins watching. Not as CEO and Maid, but as equals writing their own vows this time. Lantern light bathed the garden in gold as sunset painted their new beginning. No designer labels or society photographers. Just family, friends who'd helped her survive, and colleagues who'd seen him change from a man who demanded respect to one who earned it. The twins, now walking with wobbly determination, wore matching outfits. Mason in tiny suspenders, Mia in a dress that matched her mother's simple cream gown. "I thought renewal ceremonies were for couples married decades," Loretta whispered to Dr. Washington as they sat among the 20 guests. "Some people pack decades of growth into months," the doctor replied. Watching Landon help Mia toddle down the makeshift aisle, Mason already in Kayla's arms. The past year had transformed them both. Landon had restructured Pierce Enterprises, appointing a COO to handle daily operations while he built the Atlanta division. More importantly, he'd restructured himself, learning patience while teaching Mason to sleep through the night, finding humility in Mia's delighted recognition of his face, discovering partnership in co-parenting with Kayla. For her part, Kayla had started nursing school, supported by both the clinic scholarship and Landon's encouragement. She'd found her voice not just as a mother, but as a woman with dreams beyond survival. They'd dated properly, him courting her with the respect he should have shown from the beginning. They'd fought, reconciled, and grown together. And 6 months ago, when he'd moved from his apartment into their family home, it wasn't about convenience or appearances, but about choice. Now, they stood facing each other, the legal marriage they'd begun in Manhattan, receiving the heart it had always lacked. "When I met you," Landon began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, "I saw a solution to my problem. I treated you as a transaction, a contract to fulfill my needs without regard for yours." He glanced at their children, then back to her. "I lost everything I thought mattered, only to find what actually does. You gave me 2 miracles I didn't deserve and 1 chance I nearly wasted." He knelt before her, not in courtroom desperation, but in chosen humility. "I once saw you as a solution to my problem. Now I know you were the answer to questions I didn't know to ask." Tears slipped down Kayla's cheeks as she spoke her vows. "I married you for security, thinking I was sacrificing freedom. I never expected to find strength, partnership, or love." She touched his face gently. "You were right about one thing. Our marriage was a business arrangement. But businesses can be restructured, rebuilt into something better. That's what we've done, not as boss and employee, but as equals bringing different strengths to the same vision." When they exchanged rings, simple bands that replaced the ostentatious diamond he'd originally given her, Mia clapped her hands in delight, drawing laughter from the guests. The reception was held on their back patio, catered by the shelter's culinary training program that Landon now funded. Pierce Foundation's first initiative had been healthcare access for underserved communities, with nursing scholarships that would benefit others like Kayla. Later, after guests departed and the twins slept soundly in their rooms, they stood in the doorway of the nursery, arms around each other. "We should give them a sibling someday," Landon murmured against her hair. "Let me finish nursing school first," she laughed softly. Their bodies remembered each other, but everything else was new. The whispered permission, the lingering care, the absence of power that had once defined them replaced by partnership that heightened every sensation. In their bedroom, one they designed together, he kissed her with reverence that had deepened, not diminished with time. "Thank you," he whispered against her skin. "For what?" "For fighting for us when I was too blind to see what we could be." Their reunion was both familiar and new, desire tempered by deeper connection. His hands traced the changes motherhood had brought to her body with wonder rather than assessment. Her touches guided him without hesitation, the trust between them now absolute. Afterward, as moonlight painted patterns across their bed, she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady heartbeat of the man who'd once seemed made of ice. "Do you ever think about how we started?" she asked. "How different everything is now." He traced patterns on her shoulder. "I think about how close I came to losing this. How many wrong turns I took before finding the right path." "We both took wrong turns," she corrected. "But we ended up here anyway." What does it mean to truly start over with someone? Not erasing the past, but building something entirely new? Share what genuine transformation looks like to you. Because sometimes what begins as our greatest mistake becomes our most beautiful second chance. Sometimes the contract that binds you leads to the love that frees you. And sometimes The most powerful business decision you'll ever make is choosing heart over pride, family over empire, and love over control. If this journey from control to connection touched you, hit that like button and subscribe. This story shows how true power isn't found in boardrooms, but in the courage to be vulnerable. Comment which part of their transformation resonated most with you. Remember, sometimes what begins as our greatest mistake becomes our most beautiful second chance.